The other metal that I like to invest in is lead. I think that common caliber ammunition is the ideal barter item. And I know some of your listeners are in countries where firearms are very heavily restricted, so that wouldn't apply there. But for anyone living in the U.S. or Canada, for example, I would recommend stocking up on common caliber ammunition, because in a really severe crisis, people won't even want precious metals to trade in, at least in the first few weeks. They'll be looking for the most precious metal, and that usually starts with a caliber that starts with a 3 or a 4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and over here, and when I speak, I'm only referring to the DR because it's where my family lives. I mean, there are several excellent alternative Plan B countries. So I'm not, just to make it clear, I'm not boasting that this is the only one, and I never have on my website. But obtaining a gun here is a fairly easy process, but you do have to be a resident. Once you're a resident, you just simply apply for the permit. You will have to answer a test if you want a carry permit, to have it in your car or to have it on you when you're out in the public. But it is a fairly easy thing to do. However, automatic weapons are not permitted. Just so there's a clarification there. Jim, volatility appears in several forms. Another potentially dangerous form of volatility is surfacing within several nations and amongst its citizens. Protesting and violence is definitely on the uptick. What path do you see this heading down in the near future?
Well, I think that the most immediate threat to families is the threat of home invasion robberies. And if you look at what's going on in Mexico, in Honduras, in Haiti, for example, and to a lesser extent in places like Costa Rica and Dominican Republic and some of the other offshore havens, the threat of home invasion robbery is something that people need to keep at the forefront of their minds. They need to keep it in mind when they're building a house or when they're remodeling a house so that they can have more defendable architecture. You need to have layers of protection between you and the bad guys so that you can either have time to organize your own defense within your family or call authorities so that they can deal with it. The threat of home invasion robberies, I think, is going to become greater and greater as time goes on, because the robbers are going to become more sophisticated, better organized, and they won't just be cutting phone lines as they come in. They may be carrying cellular phone jammers with them. So the level of sophistication is going to go up on the part of the home invasion robbers, so your level of sophistication as a homeowner needs to go up. The military talks in terms of threat spirals, and that's what we're talking about here. It's a threat spiral. Their capabilities go up, your capabilities need to go up correspondingly. And the main defense that you have is the architecture of your home itself. Now, I realize that for people living in the tropics, it can be problematic. But you can still have very good ventilation with bars over your windows and doors that look decorative. You can have them done in very nice wrought iron and, painted nice colors or whatever. But you need something to slow those people down from entering your home. Because if you wake up with a pistol pointed in your face, it's too late. You've already lost the game.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And wrought iron and decorative window defense systems are prevalent. They always have been. It boils down to, though, in my thought and at least my studies for the past couple of decades, of food. Lack of food is what starts the rioting, not lack of money. And that's one of the things I wish more people would take serious and look into growing partially their own food. I think that's just something. The Dominican Republic has always been looked at. Like if you take an example of the earthquake in 2010, pretty close to 80% of the structures in Haiti were destroyed. But yet, where was the invasion? Didn't happen because they're used to having almost nothing. It was very adjustable for most people there. However, many countries are looked at as an iron fist wrapped within a silk glove. I can only speak about this country as if it's very good to Haiti, but when they also say enough is enough, they have ways of showing it. And I think if there was going to be an invasion in my country, my studies yielded it would have come in 2010 because almost 80% of the structures were destroyed over in Haiti.
Wow. Yeah, that's you've obviously seen trauma up close and personal, and you've seen how resilient the Dominican Republic has been. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that you do have a society that revolves around sustainable, self-sufficient agriculture, family-based agriculture.
It's about 68% of the population is related to or their family works or owns a farm. 68% of the population is related to agriculture of some form or another, which is a fairly substantial amount of people. And that is something that gave me a little bit of inner peace, knowing that I feel tomorrow is going to be the same as today when I wake up, because I'm not seeing, as the economies are wavering in volatility, I'm not seeing a change out here in the country at all with the people. As long as we have rain, that's our be-all, end-all. If we have a drought like what's going on right now in California, that's going to be bad news for us. But as long as we have rain, nature seems to take care of itself, with the bugs, chickens eating bugs, making eggs, cows eating grass. There's nothing that isn't free walking here. So that's my big concern is rain. I know that might sound silly to you, but that's what keeps us going.
That doesn't sound silly to me at all. In fact, I think that for any of your listeners who live in the United States, they really need to think in terms of strategic relocation. If they're going to look for a retreat property, they need to look at plentiful water, both surface water and reliable rainfall, as right near the top of their list. There, in the United States, are a number of areas that are referred to as dryland farming regions. And in fact, I set my first novel, Patriots, right in the middle of one. That's a region called the Palouse Hills, which is in northern Idaho and the adjoining portions of eastern Washington, in and around the town of Moscow, Idaho, if you want to look on your map. The reason I mention that region is because they have reliable rainfall year after year, and they're able to grow field crops, quite a bit of hay, wheat, peas, lentils, all that sort of thing, quite reliably without irrigation. And that is the real sticking point. Most of modern agriculture in the United States is dependent upon grid power for agriculture. That's for the irrigation of those crops. Once the power grid goes away, a lot of that country is going to revert to desert. And it's very important that if people are looking at strategically relocating, they move to a region where there's reliable rains and viable crops. That's what keeps people fed. That's what keeps death away from your door.
I'm going to touch about that a little bit further into the chat exactly on that topic, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to enhance on it a bit. But just a quick sidebar. I had a very good friend of ours from Florida visit us last week for a week, and I hope you'll take a moment to go to the website, the DRescapes website, and actually read that post, Jim, yourself. He's into sustainable living, and he is a organic health nut if I ever met one. I mean, the guy can swim 2 miles and jog 5 miles on a beach, and he's not even winded. But did we ever turn him on to a whole new meaning of what the word sustainable living means? I took him out into the mountains. It's about 3 hours. And I showed him all the aqueducts going over the roads and how even our government stations, they don't have any electric pumps. All they have is manual valves to direct it. Everything is gravity fed into our whole region. And I would think that's a pretty safe bet. It's almost entire gravity fed water.
Yes, and that is very unusual by American standards. There's very few American cities that are served by gravity-fed water systems. And by gravity-fed, I mean gravity-fed from end to end. You know, a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, we've got gravity-fed water. It comes from our reservoir up the hill. Well, how does that reservoir get filled? Oh, well, that comes from the aqueduct, which is pumped, or that comes from groundwater, which is pumped, or whatever. 95% of the American population is dependent upon civic water supplies that have an electric pump somewhere in the system. And about 50 years ago, that wasn't the case. It probably would have only been about 60 or 70% of the population. But what's changed has been because of the U.S. EPA, they introduced turbidity standards for water, which in layman's terms is basically the cloudiness of the water. And because of that, they have to take these nephelometer readings to measure the turbidity of the water. And to meet the federal standards, most water has to go through a filter system. And to go through the filter system, it needs to be pumped. So even cities that were originally served with gravity-fed water now have pumps involved in their system, and it'd be very difficult for them, in many cases, to take those pumps out of the loop because they've hard-plumbed them all in.
I see. So it's okay to fill it with fluoride and other chemicals, but God forbid there's a little cloudiness to it, right? Okay, I understand that logic, but anyway, switching topics.
The American population very vulnerable to a grid power failure. And I think if there is a grid collapse, if the grid goes down and doesn't come back up, we're going to see a huge number of refugees, especially in the western and southern United States, southwestern United States, very quickly. So again, people need to look at water in terms of where they relocate strategically. It should be at the very top of their list.
Absolutely. I agree with without water, nothing matters, air and water.